as human beings, we typically don't change. And our body is wired that way. Our brain is wired that way, right? Fight or flight. So until we experience some pain, until we experience some uncontrollable occurrence in our life, we typically will not change a pattern, right? Changing a pattern is a conscious decision because of the alternative no longer being bearable. And particularly when it comes to bias and racism and sexism and xenophobia and all of these things, until you see internally what you're projecting and how that is returning to you, right? You will not change your behavior. It's like, if I'm doing something good and it's been working, guess what? I'm going to keep doing that, right? If in my social circles, bias and racism is the norm, until I change my social circle, I'm not going to believe in a new norm, right? Same thing with organizations that are predominantly white male in the senior leadership levels, which is the majority of most Fortune 500 companies and, big organizations and or small, until they recognize that we have limited our potential by only recruiting and promoting people that look like us, until there was a hit to the wallet, right? Fortunately, in many cases, a lawsuit, an ethics complaint that is consequential, businesses will not change their pattern because they believe we have core values and we live our core values, right? But not everyone joined the company for the core values. So that's the work that we're doing, right?
Yeah, that is the work that you're doing. And even when because I find myself, because we have been doing the work for, I would say, in my organization for the last 9 years, and it's been mostly training, right? And now they've gotten to this point of, when George Floyd hit, where all the people of color is like, you know what? We started talking about it. I don't want no training anymore. I want to see some action. This whole makeup of leadership that's all white up here, we need some melanin up in there. We need some new policies. We need some procedures. Enough of this training talk about belonging, togetherness, and change. I want to see some change.
Right.
And then, some of the people who are less woke were like, wait, hold on. Whoa. We did all this, right? What do you mean there's no change? We did all this.
Yeah, but training does not always equate to change. Training is an initiative. It is not necessarily action, because here's my three E's. I think I may have mentioned this in one of our previous conversations. In order to change, in order to grow, in order to be promoted, in order to build something different, you have to have education. And I'm not just talking about formal education. I'm saying whatever the thing is, you have to be learned in it. You have to study it. You have to get some exposure to the new thing, right?
Yeah.
Then you have to have, so you have education, then you have experience. I have to apply what I've learned. Give me opportunities to apply what I've learned. And then thirdly, exposure. Give me the opportunity then to be exposed to the right people, to the organization, to demonstrate I have not only learned something new, but I know how to apply it, and I'm applying it in such a way that it is delivering the change, the organizational change, the individual change that we want to see.
I love all that. The funny thing is, when I first met you, I was multitasking. I was just joining the call because I was like, man, I've been so busy lately with setting up D&I. And keep in mind, 17,000 employees, the whole county, and there's a whole bunch of D&I initiatives, and I'm supposed to be like the core center to help executive leadership and everything, just like infuse it through the whole entire county. Because one of the things I was working on, like the recruiting right, and connecting with the Black and Brown community, and I was like, all right, I need to get on this call. I know I'm busy doing this. Maybe hopefully I could connect with somebody. You start rebuilding that relationship. And I seen you get on, you start talking that stuff. I was like, this brother's special. I get, when you meet your kid folk and they talk, you're like, wait a minute, he talking my language right here. I know this journey. I've been through this journey before. Like,
your tribe, right? You know your tribe. Tribes, the hundreds of tribes around the world, thousands of tribes around the world, each spoke a unique dialect of even the same language, but a unique dialect of that language. And that's the thing we're in pursuit of in life. It's finding the people who speak the same language, but the dialect in which I speak it. And when you see or hear that voice, you're drawn to it. You just get closer and closer to it because that's your tribe. you know? So I couldn't agree more. You talked and I heard you talk. There we go. This is my kinfolk. This is my tribesmen.
Because I was like, some of the people, like, I just knew they wasn't, some of the stuff he's saying is just going way over their head. They ain't catching these nuggets right here. I'm going to need him to repeat some of this. We and him could engage in a dialect that allowed them to see the greatness in themselves and pick these nuggets that they missing a little bit of.
Yeah, and I noticed that you became, and I was like, is he one of the hosts of the call? Because you began to facilitate or act as a conduit, translating really my message through you. Like you just said, even in your work with the 17,000 people, right? You are the conduit that gets to translate that into comprehensible, right? Executable, tangible information that people can really understand. So I recognized that on the call, and I really appreciated that. I was like, look at Terrell with the special spelled name Terrell. Like, I love it.
But, so this podcast has been a journey of mine for a while, because I do a lot of public speaking just like you. I've done it for the past 4 years between community colleges and institutions. What was always told to me, especially people who are educators, first they try to get me to become an educator. It's like, we don't have enough Black educators. I was like, yeah, you could play me enough to be a teacher in this system.
A lot. And they won't pay you enough.
And then it's like, then people start saying, you know what, you should really start a podcast. You should really start a podcast. So after hearing that a million times, I finally started a podcast.
It makes sense. Even just again in our conversations, you have an amazing and diverse perspective, right? That is expansive. It is not narrow. That's the other thing, right? It's okay to be single-minded. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. I forget the woman's name, but she was awesome. I'll send you the podcast,
okay.
TED Talk. But she was awesome. And the topic of her TED Talk was the power of single-mindedness. What she was really referring to, or her message, is about the power of focusing on one thing relentlessly. And her one thing is diversity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, how it connects to this is like, your one thing, right? This is the mission that you're called to, and you'll do it early in the morning. You'll do it late at night. You'll do it 24 hours straight. That is the beauty of purpose. And I want everybody to have that experience.
Yeah.
You ever met someone that's like, I don't know my purpose? It's heartbreaking, but it's also an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense, and that's the whole reason why I started this podcast. Because some of the youth that I would see, even adults, actually, I see some lost souls at work, been there for 40 years. They living for retirement because they think that's their purpose.
Yeah, work and then stop working one day.
Right.
And it's not sad, right? Because it's just people's reality. But it is so much less than the life that we're meant to live. We're not meant to go to a job and give the best of ourselves to the job and give the rest of ourselves to our family. Mm-hmm. It's the other way around.
Nah.
You give the best of yourself to your family, and then you give the rest to your family, to your purpose, to your community. Then you give the rest of yourself to the 9 to 5, unless, which many people don't have the opportunity or haven't found the opportunity, is when you can blend the two, when you are living your purpose, when you are working, in a field that aligns with your purpose, your passion, and that you earn, provision for, you earn a paycheck for. That's the beauty.
That's the beauty. And that's why I always, I don't know if you heard me say, do what you love what you do. Don't chase the money, let the money chase you. Because I realized that after fulfilling that purpose of what my parents wanted, what society wanted, getting that education, here it is. I got out of the hood, got my master's degree, unfulfilled, miserable. And I was like, I can't live like this. And, I went through these phases like, am I a failure because I quit this and try to do something different that pays less? Was when I found my purpose. And what I see so many times in our youth that are going through it now, even if they're in college and so forth, that these lost souls, I like to call them, because they're chasing someone else's dream or purpose for them, and it's not actually their purpose or their unique talent or their unique skill. And we have these limiting beliefs of what we can do, what we can be, based on whether it be society, our parents, our community has ingrained in us. And what I hope to do with this podcast is highlight all the brilliance with the Black community and the African community, because the African community has a very special place in my heart because my stepdad is Nigerian, of Nigerian descent. I grew up in a Nigerian household and culture, and there's a disconnect between our heritage and our Black community from like Blacks in the diaspora that grew up here in America to, Africans and Blacks who are from the motherland and the continent, and the way we treat each other and how we see each other. Because when if I showed up growing up in the hood of DC in my Nigerian gear at the time, it wasn't cool or sexy. It was like, look at this Nigerian as African booty scratching.
Right,
go back to where you came from. I was like, bruh, you do know your roots is from there. And then if I was showing up in my Nigerian community, there's like, oh, you ain't Black enough. Like you haven't been through what we've been through.
Which is, it's so amazing. It goes back to the point that we all want people to be exactly like we are. That's the real challenge with inclusion, is if you're different than me, I automatically exclude you. And that's a learned behavior. Even being Black and brown within the Black community in and of itself, we range on the spectrum of color from 99%, appearance of white to, the darkest of the most beautiful dark, right? And even within our own spectrum, we have, as you know, that colorism, right? It makes sense that on one hand, you weren't Nigerian enough. On the other hand, you weren't, Black enough. And that's a confusing and difficult place and space to be in. I'm glad I grew up where I grew up in Miami. And so it was very diverse. And so you had, Black, a little minimal white, but still some white exposure, but Hispanic and Dominican, all forms of members of the Hispanic community from the Caribbean and South America. And so, Miami is really an extremely international and diverse city that I believe was important to my experience growing up, being able to embrace different backgrounds and different cultures with less judgment. Because again, we do have our automatic bias based on the patterns that our brain establishes. Right?
Yeah, I find that people like us that do this work around diversity and inclusion, that we have some very unique life experience and learned experiences around different cultures and upbringings and around cultures that allow us the ability to tap into different perspectives and lenses based on how we grew up. I grew up in a very Black culture because I grew up in DC when it was a chocolate city, but there was like all these Black cultures. Like there was like Jamaicans, Trinidadians, Haitians, very minimal white until I came over. My mentor was actually a Jewish guy. Got me out here to California. And that's when I started to run into Filipinos, Latinos, every type of Asian Pacific Islander out here. And I remember at first I couldn't tell the difference between some of the different Asians.
Right.
And then my wife, who is Chinese, I've grown accustomed now to be able to recognize and based on convo look or whatever is happening, what type of Asian am I talking to? Southeastern Asian, Filipino, Guamanian, Samoan, or if we want to go real deep, some of those Asians consider themselves Pacific Islanders versus Asian. That's a whole nother debate. But I became more cultured, right?
Yeah, more culturally aware. But you're right. I was just speaking to one of my clients yesterday, and we were talking about experience shapes perspective. Experience shapes perspective. The fact that, and ironically, I too had an amazing mentor who happened to be Jewish, and he took me under his wing. It was when I was in the financial services industry earlier in my career, but he took me under his wing and he taught me so much. He gave me that experience, that education, and that exposure that I talked about earlier. And it's really education, experience, and exposure. He coached me, he developed me, he held me accountable because he was a leader too. He was my direct leader. And we ultimately became great friends because for me, I really value and appreciate people that will be honest enough with me to see my greatness and then hold me accountable to living and walking within that greatness. And coming from where I come from, my mom raised me as a single parent. That in and of itself was a unique position, because typically when you're raised by, I was going to say, in my experience being raised by a single parent, you can be resistant to a male sort of influence, direction or accountability, because you haven't necessarily had it in your life. And I'm speaking from my experience and what I've seen and other young men who may have grown up in a single parent household. But going back to Dave, he really helped me to, learn more about his culture. Being friends with him, being led by him, helped me to want to learn more about his culture, his community, what it meant to be Jewish, the Jewish holidays, right? The things that really mattered. And I have to give him, again, kudos, because if not for that relationship, if not for that mentorship, if not for his friendship, I may be limited in my beliefs, right? I may be closed off to learning more about cultures. As you just illustrated, you're able to differentiate and distinguish clearly between East Asians and, different, cultures and ... You would not have gotten that had you not had that experience with someone who helped you recognize, yeah, differences are real. And it's important to know who people are and don't assume everyone is the same, right? That's the total opposite of diversity and inclusion, right? It's assuming that everyone is the same and those people deserve to be there. And those people are supposed to be there, or Black people only are great at sports and entertainment, right?
Even we have this belief within ourselves, like these. I'm trying to break that mold. I'm like, look, when I go and speak to kids and they see people like us speaking, they're like, "What do you do?" Like, I do this. They got a Black person that does that? Oh, you must be an anomaly. That can't be right. And you own your own business? Nah, that can't be right. You got lucky. You must have grew up middle class. There's all these, was your daddy an athlete? Like
right. It's like you can't be multifaceted, right? But that's because, as you were saying earlier, limiting beliefs that have been placed on those youth, right? And it starts at home. Love, I believe, enables youth, adults, to begin to believe in the possibilities. Mm-hmm. I really believe when you grow up in a home that's loving and supportive, even with having less or not having as much. We weren't even middle class when I grew up, right? My mom worked and we lived paycheck to paycheck. She got paid on Friday and there wasn't anything really left on Saturday after the bills and whatever was left to try to, enjoy, that Friday. It was gone by Saturday. Yeah. But she persisted. She was she had great discipline, and she encouraged me to dream bigger, to believe better, to always have faith too. That was the other cornerstone, right? Love and faith, they really go hand in hand. Yes, and when you have both of those, I believe you're unstoppable.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. One thing I did recognize too, me and you both had Jewish mentors.
Right. That's really we're unicorns.
I know, right?
And so look at the irony, right? We both had Jewish mentors. We're both now in diversity and inclusion, right? And if we back up, we both recognized and learned that expansive view of the world and got different experiences because of those mentors. And it's led us to work that will inspire, equip, enable, and empower people to have not only just the best experience in there or within the organization, because the experience in the organization kind of overflows into my life, right? If I'm happy at work, if I feel like I belong, if I have equity, right? If I have a seat at the table, when I go home, right, I actually am more not just satisfied with the job, but there's less stress, there's less tension. I give my best for the job, then I go home and give my best to my family. But again, as I mentioned earlier, many people are giving their best to a job to prove their worth, to hold on to the job, to be enough. And that's another thing. My goal is to help people recognize you were born enough. Mm-hmm. You were born enough. You don't have to prove to someone you're enough. Prove to yourself by getting the development, by finding your purpose, by building, the relationships that you need to build the life that you've been called to build, to live the purpose that you've been called to live, right? You're the only person you have to prove that to. And I think that goes back to your point of, again, belief. It's a belief. And if I can say when I leave this world, that I've inspired millions of people to believe bigger in themselves, then it would have been a life fulfilled for me.
So, man, you know what? We could riff on this all day. Let me do a proper intro because I realize we 20 minutes in and my editor is going to kill me right now. So welcome everybody to the Risepreneurs podcast. I got Robert Johnson Jr. Let me put some respect on that. I'm sure Senior was great too, but we got Junior in the house who's dropping so much knowledge right now. Before we go into the further half of this interview, I want to just give a little bit of knowledge. I'll let you tell the story. How did we first meet? Tell the people how we first met.
So we met, crazily enough, just 2 weeks ago. We met 2 weeks ago.
But we over here talking like we've been Kim brothers for a long time, right?
For a long, long time. But again, when you meet your tribesmen and tribeswomen, when you meet your people, it feels natural, right? So we met 2 weeks ago at the San Diego Black Chamber event where I was facilitating a discussion on vision, having vision and clarity for your business in 2021, which really, is vision and clarity for your own life, right? Because you have to have your vision and clarity for yourself before you can have it for a business or, for a goal. And so we met on that call and you really jumped in and connected to the message. And it's almost as if we were having our own conversation in the broader, on the broader call, but it was relevant. It was engaging. And, you did a great job of bringing people in and along the journey with us. But we met then, and then we had a conversation the next day. In the chat, we were both kind of sending notes, and we committed to following up and connecting. And we did it literally the next day. And it's just amazing how, again, when you meet people that are aligned with your purpose, aligned with your vision, aligned with your values and beliefs, how the relationship is instant. The connection is instant.
This connection is always instant. So a big reason for this podcast is, to highlight all the different individuals in the Black community that are just doing great things, talk about their journey, how they got to where they're at, just so that I want these episodes for whether it's a young person who's trying to figure out, their purpose, or an older person who's been stuck in that 9-to-5, who really needs to pivot and they're looking for anything. They're trying to find a way to hear these stories, hopefully see something within the individuals that they're hearing about and get inspired, right? There's also a thing that I do when I talk to young people. I used to do a program where I used to help young people get their first job, right? And some of them, they might have this vision of what they want to be, and they're like, why should I be concerned about this first job? It's not going to help me with anything. And I want to show the process of evolution. And there's still things that you can get from that first job that can help teach you or help grow you. What was your first job?
I had a couple first jobs. My first job, I'm from Miami. We learned early that if you
that's that Miami hustler right there.
That Miami hustle and flow. My first job that I can remember was going door to door asking people if they wanted their car washed. Because in Miami, it's always sunny in Miami, right? And so people really always want their car washed. So that was my first time earning money. And then after that, when I got to be about 15, my first, government job, as they would say, actually was a summer program where you work for the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Oh, wow.
Where you went with them on the trucks to, address maintenance issues for, as we would like to call them, urban developments, right? The projects, AKA. So I was, changing toilets, going to all types of maintenance requests, which was one of the most amazing experiences I could have had at 15, to have to get up early in the morning. I didn't have a car, so I would have to catch the bus, or my mom would drop me off. But it was like 100 streets. In Miami, everything it's a grid, right? So you have streets. So you go from First Street all the way up to 217th Street, right? So we were living at about 130 something at the time. I had to literally, again, go on the bus early in the morning to get to Liberty City, as it's known, to my job. And I loved it and I was grateful for it. But again, it taught me responsibility. It taught me how to manage the little paycheck that I was getting. Got my first paycheck, and it actually wasn't a little paycheck. I think they were paying us like $7 an hour, which at that time was like $1 million for me. But that was my first job, and I'm grateful for it. And it also taught me humility, right? Because you're going into people's homes, right? That I wasn't living in the projects. We lived in the projects, but we eventually were able to get out of the projects. And so it reminded me to be humble and to be grateful and to remember where we came from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to always remind people that first job, if you paying attention, there's some lessons that you could take with you, even if it wasn't a great job or a job you enjoyed, that will really help set you up for success in the next venture that you're going to. There's always a lesson to be learned. Now tell people what you kind of do now, what you're working on. I still need to get me one of those hoodies. For those who can't see that are on the podcast, he has a corporate dropout hoodie. Something that I aspire to own one day, but I'm on my purpose and mission right now. So I have to stay in the corporate world just a little bit to create some change.
Listen, I love it. I'll tell you, a little bit about my journey, and then we'll come back to corporate dropout. So being from Miami, I was the first person in my family to graduate high school, the first person in my family to graduate college. I went to Florida Memorial University, amazing historically Black college. The Florida Memorial University, right? Where I that was another experience for me, or the first experience, one of the first, and really people wrapping their arms around me and seeing my potential and seeing my talent and equipping me and empowering me and coaching me and holding me accountable to living my best. Athena Jackson, she was the career placement and planning advisor. She was, if it were not for her, I don't know. Again, it's just one of those interactions, those relationships. We're still connected to this day. If it were not for her, I may not have gotten my first real internship that led to my first real career corporate America job, right? Which was with Owens Corning. So I graduated college, left Miami, moved to Chicago to work for a company, Owens Corning, which is a building materials company. So they do everything from shingles to asphalt, anything for residential and or commercial building, they provided. And so got there, learned a lot, but it was also the first time I felt isolated, right? Because you have this Black kid from Miami going to, and actually it was Maumee, Ohio for 3 months to train before I moved to Chicago. But I'm a Black kid, and now I am a Black face in a sea of what felt like white faces. We're talking about Toledo, Ohio. It's not extremely diverse, but even less so in the corporate structure. You're talking about 1999, right? 22 years ago now, which is crazy, that I had never been in corporate America. I didn't know what I didn't know, what I didn't know.
There's so many layers to that. We don't have time to unpack it today, but those who know.
Those who know, right? So took that challenge, maximize the opportunity, eventually moved to Atlanta with the company. Job was downsized, which speaks to the power of knowing where you're supposed to be. I knew I was meant to leave Chicago and move to Atlanta. 6 months later, the job was eliminated. And for those who are listening, always know that when God has a plan for you, he always has provision prepared on the other end of it, right? So be willing to say yes to opportunities that scare you, that you don't know if you can fully and efficiently or effectively do, because you will get what you need to get it done. Now, you got to make the commitment to get it, but you'll get it and get it done. And so left, or was, job was eliminated. That led to an opportunity to go work for Sam's Club, which I did that for 4 years. Hard, challenging, but one of the best developmental experiences for me in my career. I was an inventory manager, so pretty much I had to be to work at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you didn't leave until it was done. So I would leave at 4 or 5 o'clock the day, which some would say the following day, but it's like a 12, 14-hour shift. But I was committed to it. I was dedicated to. I always recognize that the way I leave something is a reflection on me. The way that we leave something is a reflection on us. Even if we found it in a poor state, it's up to us to leave it in a better state than we found it, because the person is only going to remember, oh, Terrell was the last person here. Terrell was the last to see this or touch this, and he left it like this. Or, wow, Terrell was the last person here. This is amazing. He did a wonderful job, right? So even at 22, 3, 4 years of age, I was aware that I was leaving a mark. Some would say a brand. Today, we would call it a brand.
Yeah.
But I was leaving a mark. And so eventually I knew it was time to transition, leapt into banking only because a friend of mine needed a job, and she was in accounting, and Bank of America was having a job fair. And I said, oh, Bank of America's having a job fair. You should go. I'll go with you. Right. I wasn't looking for a job even per se. And she didn't want to go. But I said, okay, I'm still going to go. I'll take your resume. So I took our resumes, dropped them off, because at the time they just wanted you to drop off your resume, write the job that you wanted, and keep it moving. Long story short, they offered me a job as a branch manager. Did that for several years, worked with some amazing people, worked with some amazing clients. So I know the value and the importance of $5 in your account as much as the person who values the $5 million in their account. Both have the same intent. It is to maximize the return on what they have in their account. And that also taught me about, again, the different biases that exist between the wealthy and the and not wealthy, the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
I saw a disparity in the predominant number of customers that had large balances were not Black. They were not brown. They were not, typically, minorities. It wasn't a very diverse community that had this money. And when I say community, I'm talking about wealthy, because that is a community, right? And so I said, I want to change that. So I began to bring those lessons back to my family, to my church, right, and to my community. And, Big Sean has a verse in one of his songs that says, I want to teach the whole hood corporate, right? And for me,
I love that.
I want people to know you can save money, start small, you can make more money, think big, right? You can grow, go take a course, right? We can achieve these goals, but we first have to believe in our mind. Everything starts in this beautiful brain that we have that leads to the manifestation of the thing. Not overnight, right? But if I believe I can do it, then you meditate on that belief enough. What do I need to do it, right? And does that make sense? Does that resonate?
That makes sense. And then I want people to understand, when we talk about wealth on this show, when we talk about wealth talk, we're not talking about the money Shaq make. See, Shaq is rich.
Yes.
We talk about the man that gives Shaq a check. That's wealth.
Yes.
So that's what we talking about. And that's what we aspire to do here.
Yeah. And even to the definition of wealth, it is bigger than the deposits in your bank account. It is the mindset. If you have a wealthy mindset, you will get and have a wealthy bank account. You will have wealthy and healthy relationships. But it starts with believing that if I can make 5 figures, 6 is only 1 digit away. And if I can make 6 figures, 7 is only 1 digit away, right? So as you grow and get closer to your financial goals that lead to you, because at the end of the day, you have to make money to live a standard of life that you want. You decide the standard, and then you pursue purpose, right? And as you said, as you're pursuing purpose, you never will have to worry about the paycheck. The paycheck will come.
Yeah. And there's some other things I like to throw in there too, since we broaden in the scope of this definition and we're looking at it. When I'm looking at it for the Black community, another thing I'm looking at when we talk about wealth, I'm talking about the abundance mindset, right? I'm also talking about health, because health is wealth. If the health stops, everything stops, right? No matter how much money you got, if the health ain't right, you ain't right, everything else ain't right. So, and that's something we have to look at when we talk about wealth. We talk about health. We have to talk about financial health, physical health, mental health, spiritual health. All these things in the Black community have to be in alignment to achieve true wealth. Yeah. And that's just my take on it. I don't know if you feel the same way.
No, I agree 1,000%, because here's the thing. You can be wealthy today and not wealthy tomorrow in the stock. Let's say you have your money in the stock market, which a lot of wealthy people do. They have investments, they have a diversified portfolio. But the thing is, the real wealthy person says, yeah, I lost 10 million or 100 million, but I can make it again, right? The wealthy mindset is that I need to start with believing, right, in myself, taking care of my vessel, my body. Because if I have this thing called a healthy body and I lose the money, I can work and do what I need to earn the wealth back. Mm-hmm. But if I don't, to your point, have a healthy body, but I have money in the bank, wealth, quote unquote, what is the point? What is the point of having whatever finances you have in the bank that you consider wealth or riches if you don't have the health and the vitality and the endurance, right? I want to be that person at 80 plus years old that's reflecting back on not the dollars per se in my account, but in the number of lives that I've affected. And now that's a whole nother definition of wealth. When you're like, wow, I helped 1 million people to become, let's just say, productive citizens in society. Because when you think about even our brothers and sisters in the prison system, recidivism is real. And when people don't have a path to becoming productive citizens post-prison, they will basically repeat. They will become repeat offenders and go back into the system. But imagine being able to say, I help people that were in prison. I help people that were, youth. I help people that were in college. I help people that were just lost. Like, that's to me the goal of life.
Yes.
Now, if you have a specific passion for one or the other, it's still okay. Like for me, one of my core demographics is Black women, because again, Black women are significantly underleveled, right? They are underpaid, yet they are highly educated, in many cases, more educated than candidates when we look at job applicants and things like that. And in corporate America, yet they don't receive their just due, and literally just due, because if you've gone to get the education, if you have the proven experience, and people can vouch and validate for what you've done, which is the exposure, why would I not be offered an opportunity to do work that I'm highly capable of doing, right? So for me, that's the big part of the work that I do. And kind of, bringing it full circle is left financial services, again, after working with some amazingly talented people, building some amazing businesses within businesses, but recognizing that, again, Black and brown talent, underrepresented talent needed the coaching, needed the mentorship, needed the equipping and the empowering and the tools that I had to offer. And I would rather step out, as we may call it, leading to corporate dropout. I may, take a leap and affect that many more people's lives, right? Like, I'd rather say that than say I built a career that was amazingly and abundantly fruitful for me, but I'm not making it amazingly and abundantly fruitful.
Absolutely. Remind me after the show that, are you on Clubhouse by chance?
Yes,
okay, all right. I need to introduce you to Dr. Tiga, who invited me on her stage to speak. She runs a thing called Her Club, and she and another career coach like to empower Black women. And I think you need to be on the stage at one of her things. Yeah, so remind me to do that. Now, something key thing that going back to a statement that you were talking about when we talk about saving money and so forth, which is a big thing that we need to learn how to do in the Black community. And also how to make money work for you. It's not just saving and hoarding that money there and stockpiling it up, but how to make money work for you. And something that you had said when we were interviewing on the radio show about circulation. And I really loved it. And I wonder if you can recite some of that, if you remember it, about circulation, so that people can understand money is a tool to help you, whether it help people build a dream, whatever it is that you want to do. If you could repeat that segment for me or give me your best take on it, because I can't repeat it because you said it so eloquently that I wanted to somehow infuse it in here.
Well, I'm glad it resonated with you, but I'll tell you, as a speaker, I will never say the same thing twice, or the one thing the same way twice. But here is my belief around money. As I just mentioned, as we were just talking about earlier, money is a tool. Money is something that should be distributed. If you think about it, money is called what? Currency. Currency, a current flows, right? Money is meant to flow and to circulate, not just in your life, but in the lives of the people around you, in the community in which you serve, and throughout the country and throughout the world. However, oftentimes we are holding our hands closed on the money that we have, and maybe it's all about a mindset. Maybe I believe I have a scarcity mindset, so I believe I have to hold on to what I have. Yet, when is the last time you poured water into your hands and squeezed it and the water stayed? It does not. You cannot hold onto water tightly. Water is not meant to be held permanently in our hands. It is meant to flow. The same thing with finances and money. And so our listeners out there today, it's not a revolutionary thought. It's just actually fundamental belief about money. I will attract that which I believe I deserve in abundance. But I also have a responsibility to release that which I believe I deserve in abundance. And so if you keep that mentality, finances will flow to you. Opportunities will flow to you. Now, remember, money in the raw form, right? Someone giving you a stack of $100 bills, that's not going to probably last, right? Because it's finite. It's right there. But if you think about money in a bigger context, as in terms of an opportunity, money is a currency that I get the opportunity to be a part of its flow, right? You will recognize opportunities to invest. You will recognize opportunities to sow seeds because, oh, by the way, sowing and reaping is a real thing. Sowing into someone's life. It's like if you have a friend, they're putting their child through college and that child needs something that they can't financially afford. You giving to that friend, or even strangers, even bigger, when you don't know the person that you're financially blessing, I personally believe that is a bigger representation of your belief about money, because you're saying, I don't even know you, right? But I want you to be well, right? So again, for me, money is currency. Money is meant to flow. It will come and it will go, just like the tide. The tide comes in and the tide goes out, but it never stops. It never stops. And so just embrace a thought process of abundance that, yes, remember the stock market, the housing crash of 2008, 9, and 10, people lost lots of money. But at the same time, people became millionaires during that time. Just last year, the pandemic, people lost jobs. And unfortunately, people lost lives, and we pray for all the souls that were lost at home here in America and abroad. People also built businesses during that time. You have to be willing to see the opportunity, even in sometimes the darkest of moments, because it's during those dark moments that we have to be innovative, that we can be our most creative. Because think about it, when you're riding high and everything is good, you're not even thinking about creativity. Most people are just riding the wave.
Yeah.
Right? But remember, every wave has to come to an end, and you got to be ready. I think it was Paul who said, I know how to abase and I know how to abound. You have to know how to deal with a little, and you also have to know how to deal with much. So I think I said it a little bit differently today.
The message still resonated. That, and I knew you was going to take it away. I was like just trying to figure out how could I set him up perfectly so he could do his thing.
You helped me. That was a good layup.
Let me lay it up. So I want to take it back to the journey, because I loved how you went into the journey. We went into the ebbs and flows of currency, money, how you can make it work for you. But going back into the journey and the career journey, one thing that I'm really curious about with you, because I've done it and still currently do it, like what were the steps that you took to kind of get from career to your business? Because I think there's some listeners that will be listening to this that may be in a career phase that might need to transition into business and starting their own thing up, right? And I know we spoke to the transitions of career, but how was your transition, and what steps would you say that you took to transition from career to business, from being the corporate person to the corporate dropout?
To the corporate dropout. Well, for me, it's probably in my 20s when I was at Sam's Club, to be honest with you. Corporate dropout, let's talk about this a little bit. It is a mindset and a belief system that I own my talents. I choose to play for the team, if we use a sports analogy, for the duration of my contract that I negotiate, by the way. So whether I'm playing for this team for a year, or I'm playing for this team for 10 years, or I'm playing for this team for 2 years, I ultimately own my talent. No one owns me, right? So corporate dropout is really releasing the belief that I am an indentured servant to a company for the duration of my career or my business. You are no one's indentured servant, right? You are the owner and the CEO of YOU.
Gotcha.
Right? Darrell has talents, gifts, and abilities that are unique to him that make him an amazingly valuable commodity, right? And that's just the reality. Our talents are commodities and assets, and we have to understand that. And we can't go into, I lost desire to make a manager or a company happy about me as a person, because we so closely associate our value as a person to our profession. What we do and get paid for. Bishop Dale Bronner said it. I was listening to his service. He's an amazing pastor, bishop in Atlanta. He said, a career is what you're paid for. A calling is what you're made for. A career is what you're paid for.
I love that.
Your calling is made for. And I had that epiphany when I was about 23, 24, working at Sam's Club, getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to be to work at 3 a.m. And I said, you know what? I don't want to put myself in a financial position to be handcuffed to a job. So I kept that mentality over the last 18, 20 years of my life. And so it governs how I manage my finances. It governs the decisions I make with whom I decide to work, where I decide to work. It governs my relationships, because you can have relationships in your life that cause you to pick up habits that are not organically and or instinctive habits. You're spending more because you have friends that like to go out and brunch. Although in our current environment, people should be saving a lot of money, because we can't, right? Like, especially, in California and Atlanta, they're still brunching. But the mindset was initiated there. And then as I grew and moved into corporate America, because I look at Sam's Club, that's retail. I had corporate, responsibilities, but once I got into financial services industry, that's where I really, really got into the corporate machine and was understanding, again, I'm a commodity and people will use me as a pawn in the positions and the roles that they want and feel are most valuable versus asking me, where do you feel you could contribute the most value to our organization? Oh, wow. Thank you for asking. Right? That's the corporate dropout mindset, is understanding that you are empowered to do work that brings you joy and also brings value to the company.
Yes.
There is a sweet spot for that. You just have to do the work to find it. And so I was at Capital One, amazing opportunity. I also look at my career as continued education. I have a bachelor's degree from the Florida Memorial University. In my mind, right, the way I look at experience, I have a master's degree from my 8 years at Bank of America. And then I have a doctorate in strategy and people, the way I look at my career, from my time at Capital One, because they challenged me to think bigger. They challenged me to build something. They challenged me to be a diversity and inclusion leader, even without having the title, but having the responsibility. So I will be forever grateful for them because it actually empowered me even more to recognize my skills and my talent are greater than I recognize. And I want to do it for as many companies as I can in my lifetime. I don't believe I want to work for one company for the rest of my life. I will contract, I will consult, I may be employed by, companies. That's my choice. I think that's the other thing that people have to understand. Don't be fooled into believing that full-time business and entrepreneurship is the route for you. That's not the route for everyone. Corporate dropout mindset is I can work in corporate America and grow a thriving business if so I choose. I like to think of it as corporatepreneurship. I operate in corporate America as a CEO and an owner. And if I'm an entrepreneur, I operate leveraging the skills and experiences that I learned in corporate America. Okay. Don't forsake the opportunity that you can glean for growth in corporate America. Like I say, learn on someone else's dime, maximize your education on someone else's time, right?
And I think that's another limiting belief that we have is that you can either do one or the other, when in actuality, you could do both. You could add value to another space and you have the time and resources and education and knowledge. Why can't you, right? It's something I've been able to do successfully in my career, and people still getting shocked. Like, how do you have this 9 to 5 and have this business at the same time? Like, how is that possible? I don't know what to tell you. It is.
I'm doing what I love. That's the other thing, right? When you can have a 9 to 5 that is connected to your purpose or connected to work that you love to do, and then you get off the 9 to 5, and then you're working 5 to midnight, right? Like it's okay when you love it. You will give it the energy. Have the energy you need to do.
I still get energized at the end of the day. I love what I do in my day job and in my side hustle, or I guess I couldn't call it side hustle now because it's a full blown business. But but in my business,
but even that ownership, right? You own something that's a business, and you may employ people or not, right? But you also are okay with going to a job doing something that you know your purpose to do because you're helping other people. That's the thing. We can be selfish. Entrepreneurship really in many ways is if it's just about a product or an idea that you have that isn't really your purpose, it can be perceived as a selfish venture. It's me, myself, and I, right? I'm out here hustling, out here, grinding. And it's like, well, do you have to do that? Like, you really know that there's multiple ways to get to the same end, and you don't have to kill yourself to prove that you're an entrepreneur or to prove that corporate America sucks. Or like, I think we have these extremes. And I think you and I have a similar philosophy, is that we want people to understand balance in your mental health, balance in your physical health, balance in your spiritual well-being, balance in your finances, and balance in your professional and or entrepreneurial life.
Because anytime I reach a point where it does not suit or fit me, or I cannot add value to it, that's when I have to remove myself from the situation and go seek that next thing. Yeah. So I love everything that you said with that. So you're a man that I foresee had many different lessons in life. What would you say? What was one of your greatest lessons that life has taught you?
That's a great question. One of the greatest life and leadership lessons that I've learned is when I was leading operations for a bank. leading mortgage operations. And ultimately, they decided to shut down my sites. I ran 2 sites with about 200 people or so. And I remember the night of my manager coming into town, and she said, "Oh, we're going to go out to dinner." I was like, "Oh, that sounds really okay. We're going to dinner, okay." And then when she walked in with her manager. So when they came in together, I knew they're about to give me some news, right? But the real lesson was having to take that message and personally convey it to these 200 plus employees to say, "Hey, unfortunately, our sites are closing and we will be displaced. Not you. I'm a part of this. None of us will have jobs in 3 to 6 months." That was the hardest thing to tell people that, depend on these paychecks week after week, month after month and year after year to take care of their family. Mm-hmm. Because their stories, right? Their stories. And so it was the hardest message to deliver, but it was the most rewarding experience because we went through it together. I wasn't able to say they will be okay. I had to say we will be okay. I wasn't able to point the finger at them and make it about, oh, they're going to have to find jobs. We're going to have to find jobs. We're going to have to get through this, mm-hmm. and we will get through this. And so for me, that's one of my biggest leadership and life lessons, because when you have someone after you deliver that message that comes into your office, and I met with every person that wanted to meet one-on-one. So when you have people that, break down, what am I going to do? I'm afraid. And you're able to be there for them on a personal level. You're able to refer them for opportunities. You're able to help them create a strategy, hopefully that will get them their next opportunity. Or if you're just there to be a shoulder to lean on. It's one or all of the above.
Yeah.
That changes you. It further reminds you of the value and importance of humility. And we're all at any given time subject to a company's decision to say our services are no longer necessary. So that's one of my biggest lessons. And it just taught me, again, that I am no better than anyone.
Absolutely.
And no one is any better than me, right?
Yeah.
We're all in this thing together. So that's one of my biggest lessons.
I think that's a very valuable lesson, especially that needs to be reheard, especially in the state of our country is in today as we move forward to get healing and build a sense of belonging and togetherness and everybody at one in unity. So let's say, because I want to start to get into that advice portion of the podcast now, what is some advice that you would give to someone who would like to start a career similar to yours and maybe do it in the industries you've done it in?
Yeah, first and foremost is be clear about who you are and what you bring to the table. And when you're clear about who you are, you will be clear about what you bring to the table. If you don't know it today, it's okay, but start doing the work to figure it out. I'm a man of faith. So the second thing I would recommend is just to believe that you're capable of whatever the thing is that you're looking to achieve. Believe that you're worth more. You may have achieved some great things thus far in your life, but that doesn't mean that you've plateaued out. It's just time to dream and believe bigger. So first, know who you are and know what you're great at. 2, you have to have faith. Whatever you believe in, you're going to have to hold on to that. You're going to have to meditate on that. You're going to have to speak that, because no one does anything without faith. Again, whatever you call it for you is up to you. But know that your faith is going to have to be a cornerstone in achieving a great life and building a great life. And that's the third thing. Building a great career is like building a great relationship. It requires identifying the one that you want, right? Having someone
I like that.
That's something that you're interested in enough to invest the time in learning, to invest the time in being curious about your career, your business. There has to be a great amount of curiosity and leading to communication. When you're curious, you ask questions. You also share. You're willing to be vulnerable. You're willing to make mistakes intentionally or unintentionally. You have to be willing to acknowledge when you get it right and or acknowledge when you don't, and own it. You have to own your decisions, the rewards and the consequences that come with those decisions. But ultimately, you're the driver. You're the designer. You get to paint the most amazing life that includes purpose, that includes profession, that will ultimately provide you with provision to live that life. Don't settle for anything less. Don't settle for anything less.
You know, one thing that I want to go back that you just alluded to, vulnerability. That's a big lesson that I learned this past year or two, and has been my greatest asset into leadership is the willingness to be vulnerable and do so at times when it's really required of you as a leader, and just how people respect that, gravitate towards that, and you could build relationships and bridges through that. And I don't think enough leaders do that. A lot of leaders try to lean into strength, but vulnerability is the greatest strength of all. To say, you know, hey, I don't know. I don't have it all. Or I'm scared too. I have these feelings too, right? That's caused me to have these emotions too. You know, I do believe there's a time to show strength, but I think if leaders would not make that their default in all situations and lead into vulnerability at times, that we can move the needle a lot quicker on, especially things around D&I, right? That takes a lot of vulnerability at times.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Even going back to this, one of my biggest lessons, right? I had to be vulnerable with my team because I could have just tried to play, okay, I'm the leader and I want to carry this. But I broke down crying when I was delivering this message to them. A grown man who's the leader literally broke down crying. And it was because it was hurtful. It was disappointing. I knew the impact that this was going to have on people. And I couldn't stand up there, as some people would say, well, as a leader, you just have to, look strong. And that's not true. Ultimately, people want to see your humanity. And if you're pretending to be what the corporate spiel or the corporate leader is telling you need to be versus your authentic self, you're failing yourself and you're failing the people that lead you. Vulnerability, humility, and humanity are essential components of empathy. Vulnerability, humility, and humanity are essential components of empathy. And when we can demonstrate empathy, basically saying, wow, Terrell, I may not have gone through that exact thing, but I can only imagine the pain that you must be experiencing, the disappointment. Or wow, Terrell, I'm so excited for you, right? Like I match or exceed your energy. That's what empathy is. It's aligning, matching, and or exceeding someone's energy or posture in a unique situation, as I define it. And if we think about diversity and inclusion and equity and belonging, that's really what we are saying needs to happen is we need to match the posture, the position of every and any employee in the organization, right?
Yes.
Meet them where they are, essentially.
Yes.
Meet people where they are. And that will give you more credibility. That will help you gain more trust. That will help you gain followership. That will help you even gain more confidence in yourself. When you just meet people where they are and be willing to be vulnerable. One thing that this kind of reminds me of, I've been thinking a lot lately. Have you heard this before? Assume positive intent.
Yes, I've heard that plenty of times.
And I've heard it too, and I didn't like when I heard it because. And so I'm encouraging people to stop telling people to assume positive intent. Here's the thing: when you're asking someone to assume positive intent, you're asking that person to be a mind reader that the other person really meant this or intends that or to project their behavior. None of us are mind readers, at least not me. I don't have that psychic ability, right? But I do have intuition. I do have gut that guides me and leads me. But I believe we should stop asking, because typically it's the employee that's being asked to assume positive intent, excuse behavior, excuse being overlooked. Oh, well, just assume positive intent. I know that he didn't mean to not have the meeting or to not show up at the meeting. Well, how? Why not just tell me, you know what? Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make the meeting. You have leaders who believe because they are leaders, they can, really disrespect your time. So I can't assume positive intent, right? Especially if it's a repeated behavior. Here's my new thing, right? Or here's the thing that I want to encourage people. Act with positive intent, and then people won't have to assume positive intent, right? Do what you say you're going to do, or let people know that you can't do it, or we need to change, or, come to a different agreement. But stop asking people to assume positive intent. That is not demonstrating vulnerability. That is not demonstrating humility. ask the person who committed the offense or committed the mistake or failure, however you want to call it, remind that person to always act with intent. And if we act with intent, we will 9 times out of 10, I believe, achieve the desired result. Long way of saying vulnerability, humility, humanity, empathy are important. But in the corporate, world, we tend to make excuses for leaders that don't have those qualities. And that's not helping the diversity and inclusion journey at all.
Assume they have great intentions, to me, is just a worn out, tired statement that, I'm just like, okay. One thing that I'd like you to give education around this is that we use in the D&I space a lot is that graphic of the iceberg, yes, and then what we see on top of what we know about individuals. Yeah, then you got all the stuff on the bottom, like notions of time and all that stuff. I like to tell people, like, especially in the corporate world, we're all icebergs just floating around, right? And, sometimes when you meet somebody, you have those bubbly feelings like, I don't know what it is about this person, Robert, but I can see that's my tribe. Me and him going to get along. Yeah. And then sometimes you have that other opposite reaction. I don't know what it is about this person over here, but I just know we're not going to. And then sometimes these icebergs floating around, sometimes that's where the clash happens, down below. And when you look at those things that are down below, whether it be notions of time, different notions of like how we communicate, whatever those things are, right? Maybe religious beliefs, whatever it is, those are the underlying things that cause us to clash or have those misunderstandings. But we won't get to those core things of knowing that unless we engage in dialogue and get to a level of understanding. Now, it doesn't mean that I would necessarily automatically, once I know that, I'm going to agree with that person, but now I have a better understanding why they behave or the decisions they make, which will allow me to have more humility, empathy, humanity, whatever it is that you want to seek to have a better understanding of that individual and to move accordingly, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The goal is not to agree. The goal is to understand.
Yes.
Right? I don't have to agree with Terrell, but I need to understand his rationale, his thought process, and in order for me to understand that, I need to know his experience, which is all the stuff beneath the surface. But what most people take is what they see. They see a Black man and they have their perceptions of who Robert is as a Black man or who Terrell is as a Black man. But they have no clue of my experiences and or my mindset until we have a conversation, which goes back to being curious. We don't have to do anything. If we want to build a more inclusive, equitable environment of belonging, because I believe in this, where we are today, diversity is sort of organic for many companies, but there are companies that have minimal diversity and they have to have a strategy just on diversity. But in today's environment, companies like JP Morgan Chase or County of San Diego, Orange County, right? There tends to be more organic diversity where we're working on inclusion and creating belonging. But I think your point is spot on. And it's just that we have to be curious about the iceberg and not just assume that you're a block of ice floating on water, right? Right. We're all much more than what the human eye can see, but we got to be curious. If you were curious enough about me and I curious enough about you, we would not be having this conversation today.
Absolutely.
So again, curiosity and then being willing to be vulnerable, as you called out, and then taking action, right? So you can't just be curious. You can't just be, vulnerable. You have to take sort of that third leg of the stool, which is action, asking questions, doing something as simple. And we've heard this, asking someone to lunch that you've never gone to lunch with or would not in your personal life have an opportunity to go to lunch with.
Absolutely. Expanding your circles that you normally have in your life. So when I go in to speak to some of the companies or so forth, and we talk about diversity and inclusion, and it's like, well, we got all this diversity. All right. So let me break it down for you. I'm a foodie, so I like to use food analogies. I look at, if you ever had, let's say gumbo, right? Have you ever had gumbo?
Yeah.
I know you had some gumbo, right? What goes into the gumbo?
You got rice and you got meat, whatever meat you like, right? You got veggies, you got seasoning, you got a lot of different ingredients.
Yeah, you got a lot of different ingredients in there. And you know, especially when you go down to Louisiana, everybody claim they got the best gumbo, man. They put different things in it, right? Some people say they foot the kitchen sink and everything in their mama. But I tell them, look, you know, building, when you do diversity and inclusion, it's not, you know, you might have all these ingredients, but like you make gumbo, you don't just throw everything in the pot and say, hey, we got it, right? This is about how you include these ingredients in there. There's a time that you put this in there. You got to let this marinate for a little bit, and then you bring this in. So it's about making that good pot of gumbo. And you got to know how to make it, right?
Yeah, man, that's a great analogy. And it's one not just for the workplace, but for life. We're all different ingredients that bring a different level of flavor to the conversation, flavor to the tribe, flavor to the community, flavor to whatever it is that we are a part of. But here's the key. You have to appreciate flavor in order to invite flavor to be a part of your dish, right?
There you go. Speaking my words.
Some people like bland food. I don't.
And look, everybody like their gumbo different. But, you know, we can have 3 different flavors of gumbo and it all tastes good. And it's all about how you create this gumbo.
Yes, it is about how you create it, what you throw in, when you throw it in. But here's the other thing. Have you ever met someone who's never had a dish and say they don't like it, but you've never had it?
Yeah.
How can you be single-minded or turned off about something that you've never had? Oh, it looks this way. Oh, it smells this way. Or someone told me. We do the same thing with people. We don't like people because someone, you know, of what we've seen on TV or what, you know, our mama said or our uncle said or our neighbor said, right? When we've never even interacted with the person, which is why when I go in to work with organizations, one of the first questions I ask, is how do you live diversity and inclusion in your personal life? Because I wouldn't be here if you didn't need it here in the workplace, right? But tell me how you live it in your personal life. Because if you're not living and you don't have a diverse community in your personal life, one, are you willing to do it? Because I don't want to assume that it's because you don't want to do it. Are you uncomfortable doing it? Or maybe you need a bridge, right? Maybe you want to take what you learn at work to then be able to apply it to your personal life. I can accept all of those answers, but what will not work for me is if you're saying you want more diversity and inclusion, but you don't represent what you say you value outside of 4 walls, because it's disingenuous. It's inauthentic, and it's not going to work inside if you don't take this work outside and begin to.
So what do you think the future has in store for this industry? And I want you to speak to both lenses. I want you to speak to the industry of when we talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion, this work that we do. And then I also want you to speak to us as Black I'm gonna have you speak to the Black women as you teach and help them grow to be entrepreneurs, corporate dropouts, entrepreneurs. What does the future have in store for both of these different entities as you see it?
Yes, that's a good question. I can take an hour to answer both. So you're gonna have to keep me honest here. I'm gonna start with Black women because at the end of the day, again, I was raised by a single Black mother, and I want better for her, and I want better for any other Black and brown woman. And I want to be clear, any woman that wants it, but I can only speak to my experience and what's made me the man that I am and who made me the man. But for Black women, because of what they have the power to do and have been proven, 2020 was the year that Black women were able to not only demonstrate their power, but use their power to transform our country, which will, I believe, transform our world. So for every Black woman, Black girl that's out there listening today, the first thing I would encourage you to do is stop asking for permission. You didn't ask for permission of your parents to be born, so you don't have to ask for permission from the world to live and be the most amazing person in spirit and live the most purposeful life that you can. So you don't have to ask for permission. You were born with permission. That's first and foremost. Second, when it comes to career and or entrepreneurship, be clear about, again, who you are and what you want. And you go in there and you ask for it, right? go into these corporate environments, go into your business conversations or business opportunities, clear about who you are, what you bring to the table, and your value. Because at the end of the day, we all know that women are just typically undervalued. And so you got to go in there being powerful. And here's the third thing, be confident. And the best way to be confident is to be clear about the other two things, right? Knowing that you deserve it and knowing your worth. Confidence is like, women show up in many different ways. Some women love to wear heels. Some women hate heels. Some women wear makeup. Some women hate makeup. Some women, are natural hair. Some women prefer straight hair, right? Whatever your thing is, own it. If you love wearing heels, who cares what people say about you and your heels? You walk in there powerful and strong. If you're rocking your natural hair, be confident in who you are with your natural hair. You walk in there confident and strong. Know how beautiful you are inside and out. If you wear makeup or you don't. We all know, though, here's the reality about business, period, is that business it's a partnership and it's a collaboration, and it's almost like a play or a production. And every person has their part. Every person has their part in the production. If you're talking about being in a corporate environment, every person has their part and they have a role to play. Again, know your role and you play the hell out of that role. When you get handed the baton, you run as fast as you can because you're just waiting. You're waiting for that baton to be handed to you by the person that's running up. If you think about a relay, I recently saw this relay video and this young she amazing.
That sister.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, she lapped the whole. Oh my, I saw it too.
She is representative of what every woman and every Black woman has the capability and potential to do. Be a lap behind and still catch up. But she was confident. She didn't look back. She just ran the race to the best of her ability. That's the thing. Run your race to the best of your ability, ladies.
Yeah. Speaking on that same note, I want to give another Black woman her flowers, Amanda Gorman. Ooh. That's talk about speaking your truth, being confident. That young 22-year-old woman, when she got up there and told us the hill that we climbed, she had me in tears, bruh.
Man,
she had. I was like, oh my God,
confident.
This woman right here. And I had a conversation with another person offline. I was like, you know what? If this doesn't show America how truly strong, gifted, and educated, and everything that embodies the beauty of a Black woman, here again, a Black woman is taking this country, holding us, helping us heal, showing us who we are, and trying to provide the medicine to help us get through this.
Yes. Again, a Black woman taking the mantle, standing in the position of power and owning that position of power and the responsibility that came. Because she could have said a poem about a million things, but she chose to speak truth to power. She chose to speak to the potential and the possibility of who we could be and how we have to come together in order to achieve that. Bold in her yellow jacket and red beret, I forget what it's called, on her head, and her natural braids that she had. Beautiful, beautiful young woman. Yet more than her beauty, her poise, her ability to recite and speak her truth in spite of natural limitations, because she had a speech impediments.
Yeah.
Through that, she got into this space to overcome an impediment, and her gift has made room for her. National platform. Your fellow Californian, right? I think from LA. Amazing and beautiful representation.
And true to your testament, raised by a single woman.
Raised by a single woman. Raised by the power of a Black woman, especially when put in a corner, not given the support she needs. A Black woman is always going to come out strong, always going to demonstrate her ability to thrive, not just survive, but thrive. And I say that, again, being the product of a single mother who I never missed a meal. You can look at me and tell I never missed a meal. But more importantly, I never felt unloved. And so, Amanda Gorman, we honor you, we salute you. And every woman, Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, who just, again, the epitome of regal and royalty if we ever had it in our country. But you know who she reminded me of?
Who?
Amanda reminded me of Maya Angelou.
Oh, I was going to say that. Like Maya just, Angela was just flowing all through her and just embodied this young woman.
Yes. So I know there's more to come from Amanda. And again, she found her truth in pursuit of healing of her speech impediment, in pursuit of trying to be a better speaker. She found her gift, and her gift has given her an international platform. That's what I want for every Black woman, for every brown woman, for every man, every Black man, every brown man, everyone listening to this podcast. Mm-hmm. Be clear. I advocate, and Terrell and I advocate strongly for Black women. And we can also advocate for anyone that wants it, right? It doesn't have to be an either or. We're here to help the underrepresented. And I like to think of it as the invisible become visible. My job, our job, even outside of D&I, is to help the invisible become visible.
Absolutely. So we're gonna wrap it up with, because I don't think we could get any better than that. What projects are you currently working on, and where can people find you before we head out today?
Thank you, man. First, this has been an amazing conversation, which I expected nothing less. I'm honored to consider you a brother and a friend, and always here to support you. Right?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
On your journey. For me, I'm on a mission. My vision is to really transform the lives of millions of people, millions of Black and brown people, by providing them with a belief system that will enable them to build an amazing life. So for me, I'm constantly pursuing opportunities to do that work. Right now, I work as, I have my executive coaching business. So, again, providing the tools, resources, and language, because a big part and opportunity that, as Black and brown people we have is not knowing the language of corporate America.
Yeah.
So we communicate, but we're not communicating effectively because we weren't given the advantage of being taught the language. So teaching people that language, and then consulting when I go into businesses and organizations, nonprofits to Fortune 500s, and helping them along their cultural transformation, leadership journey. What I'm most excited about right now is a group coaching program that I launched last fall called the Corporatepreneurship Leadership Academy.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's really amazing because I'm in cohort 3. And it was just, an idea. It was just something that God gave me that I knew I needed to do something with. It was something that also affords me the opportunity to reach more people and make it accessible. Most people can't afford, the average person can't afford a one-on-one coach. But through group coaching, people have access to that development, personal and professional development. So I'm super excited about that. Just did our first promo video for it, and that'll be coming out shortly. But if you are someone out there that, anything's resonated with you that Terrell or I said, please feel free to reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn at Robert H. Johnson Jr. Social media, Instagram, I am the corporate dropout. I am the corporate dropout on Instagram. And I have Linktree there. And if you're interested in just talking, you can click in my bio and set up some time. And I'm happy to talk with anyone that, again, believes better is possible. Or maybe they're hopeless. I don't and haven't seen, better be a possibility, but I want to find out how, right?
Hey.
So happy to help anyone that's on that journey.
Robert Johnson Jr., man, it's been a pleasure. I am so happy that the good Lord has aligned our paths to connect with each other. Look, I'm going to connect with you offline. Ladies and gentlemen, my tribe, I'm going to connect with this man to see if I can do a partnership with him to offer that group coaching for everybody listening. So y'all stay tuned. I know I'm putting them on the spot. We had no previous conversation to this, but we're going to make it work. We'll make it work.
It's done, brother. You are all do is ask, right? Sometimes life is just all about asking for what you want.
Yeah.
And so shall it be. So we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. Thank you, my brother. We definitely going to probably have to do a part 2 because we and you, I know we can riff for days. You have a blessed and wonderful weekend. Thank you for being on the RiseUrbanNation podcast. And for everybody who's listening, I'll put all his social media in the show notes and everything so you guys can check him out, follow him.
Thank you. Be well, everyone.